here doing a little bit of block prep, trying to get everything together so when I get it to Richard, we know exactly what we need to do to it. I'm going to go ahead and hone it today and try to determine if that cylinder that the rod broke in is going to need a sleeve or not. I'm pretty sure it's going to, but I don't know yet, so let's check it out. So we're going to just hone the cylinders out. We're going to use a Barry hone. This thing works great. They make a whole bunch of different sizes, different coarseness of grits. But this one, you can see it's just got the little berries of like a sandpaper material. It's like a little rocks. And as it goes through there, it just fits. You just go up and down in the cylinder. We use WD-40 when we're doing the honing, and it gives a pretty good surface. So I'll show you what the surface will look like when we get done. And you see these surfaces, you know, down in the cylinders, there's a little bit of wear marks in there. You know, methanol is very corrosive, so when this thing sits, the methanol tries to evaporate the oil off the cylinder, so sometimes you get a little bit of rust. It's just really hard on the rings. It's hard on the ring package. So let's hone this thing. It's a good idea to spray it with a little bit of WD-40, and then all I do is simply go up and down in the hole and just count your amount of times. Try to be consistent from cylinder to cylinder. The speed I use is pretty fast. I'm not a professional machinist, so some of the machine shops may disagree, but this is what I do when I'm just roughing the bore up, just honing it so you get a good seal on the ring pack. That easy, I have honed the cylinders, so now we'll see what we got, see what it looks like down in there when we wipe the WD-40 out, see what kind of surface we're left with. So now all I'm going to do is get a paper towel and start cleaning this out, and you can feel the roughness, and you can see the material from the stone, and it really dulls down that nice shine that was there earlier from where the rings had wore. Now those rings are gone, or now that shine is gone. Now we got a nice dull surface. So this is a rough surface, so that the cylinders, the rings will seat. Now I'm sure there's some point that there's some magic RA number that the machine shops want on the smoothness or roughness scale. I don't know what that is, so I just use the Barry hone and then clean it really good, and then we go from there. And then, you know, put it all back together. There's a lot of spots in the cylinders that are damaged, or you got nicks or cracks, or, you know, surface imperfections. Those are going to be spots when your rings are going up and down, they're not going to seal properly. So you could get leaking compression, you could get some smoke, you could get a little bit of oil into the combustion chambers, into the combustion cycle. So it's one of those things you have to be careful. You know, a lot of people bore them, you know, every single time, but sometimes it's not necessary to bore it every rebuild. Sometimes you can just freshen it up and put new rings in it, new bearings in it, and go on about your business, and then it seals fine and runs fine. Now, some of the machine shops may disagree, and that's fine. This is the backyard way to do it, I guess I would say. Okay, so we got this thing honed. That didn't take very long. And you can see down in there, the cylinder looks much nicer. It's got a nice semi-rough texture to it. Most of the marks are going out of the cylinder walls. You can see a nice cross hatching in there. So that's good. And there's a couple of damaged spots in this cylinder. Looks like just a piece of rod or something got popped up in there. This is the one that the cylinder, the rod actually broke in. That's very difficult to see, but down in there, right there, those scratch marks are pretty deep. And I'm fixing to measure and see how deep they are. I don't know if they're below. If they're below the rings, then it'll be fine. If they're in the ring package, then we're gonna have to sleeve that one. Which sleeves are not a big deal. A lot of times when you mention sleeve, people get nervous, but I mean, this block's got 3 cylinders that have sleeves in it now. So, I mean, that'll be number 4. So, I mean, we're halfway there. I mean, I guess I could just go ahead and get Richard to sleeve all of them, and then we've got a 100% sleeve block. But I mean, I don't guess that's absolutely necessary. But sleeves are not bad as long as they're installed properly, and you know the machine shop that you hire to do it you trust, which I do. Richard Coates does a great job on my machine work, so I trust him, and they're going to be installed properly, and it's going to work good. Okay, so I just grabbed one of my pistons. We're going to see how far the ring package is down. Looking at it, when you measure the ring, it's about 650 thousandths down, but we'll measure a little bit further than that, so about 750 thousandths down. The stroke of my crankshaft is 3.34. So basically, we got to extend this thing out to about 4 inches, and that's where the oil ring, how far it will be going down in the bore. So I'm going to just measure this down in there. If it is in that spot that is damaged, then we're going to put a sleeve in it. If not, then we're not going to put a sleeve in it. Okay, so looking at it, the damaged part is, it would be in the ring package. Probably the top ring would probably be okay, but the oil ring would definitely be going by this spot. So this one's going to get a sleeve as well. Not a big deal. Sleeve time it is. So again, this is a Dart Iron Eagle block, so it has been a pretty tough block. You can see down here on this, we had to, for my old motor, it had a lot of clearance in it. And we had to clearance the bottom of the bore, and you know that's normal, what you have to see. Then as you move on up, you know, I've had a couple rod failures in the past, and so you can see these have got beaten up, and what I tried to do is those spots that have gotten beaten up pretty bad, I would take and you know, just smooth them out the best I could, just trying to prevent any spots that may become a weak spot and start a crack. But overall, this thing is pretty sturdy. You know, and it's beat up, it's knocked out chunks up here. I mean, this is, you know, kind of what it's supposed to look like up here. You know, but you can see, especially on this front one, that was a good broke rod. It knocked out some chunks. But there again, the piston comes out of the hole a little bit, so it's fine. Now this is one that the sleeve, the bottom of the block was kind of damaged, so the sleeve, you can kind of tell where it is. This one here, you can see the line barely. This is what, you know, it should look like when you when the block is not completely trashed. And then likewise on this one, you can see on this one, the sleeve, we had a big chunk knock out of this one. I think this was time before last, and the sleeve extends pretty far out. Now we could have taken that sleeve and ground it down to the block, but you know, the skirt of the piston is going to come out pretty far. And so we elected it. We would rather have the sleeve down in there just giving support to the piston. So that's why we did it like that. But overall, this thing is bad. So this cylinder's got a sleeve in it. This one has a sleeve, and this one has a sleeve. And now its neighbor, I think it's this one. This one right here is going to get a sleeve. So you know, we're getting there. We'll be, the whole block will be sleeved soon. But that's okay. When you buy an aluminum block this high end, they're sleeved anyway. So I'm just trying to make it aluminum-ish. I'm trying to make my Iron Eagle block think it's an aluminum block. It's okay, baby. You're aluminum. You're aluminum. So this is the spacer set up. Since my block is set up for a 400 main, and my crankshaft is a 350 main crankshaft, essentially what happens is this spacer bearing, which is a King bearing, which they sell these, which I guess you could manufacture them, but what they do is simply they cut a groove in the end here, in the normally that the crank rides in for the tang for this one. So it's pretty simple. So simply what happens is this one goes down into block, and then this one goes, it snaps in there, and it just makes it, it's a really thick bearing essentially. Hadn't had any problems in the past, but since it did fail, what I'm going to end up doing is where this bearing meets this bearing, I'm going to put a little bit of the green Loctite, the high temp, that will hopefully hold it in place and give it a good bond. And then I just know when I'm going to replace main bearings, I'm just going to replace them as a set, the spacer bearing and the bearing that rides on the crankshaft. So this is how the bearing pops in. This is the bearing that's for the 400. and it just pops down into block. And you see this one's got a loose fit. That is a sign. If the bearing has not got a tight fit, then that bearing needs to be replaced, or something's wrong. Usually the bearing's been crushed. So this is the one that come out of it. So it is a little loose fit, but I'm just showing you how it works. So the bearing, the spacer bearing goes in, pops in place, and then the bearing that rides the 350 main, it pops in to that one. And so then now you have a spacer bearing. You got a spacer bearing that has made it so that you can use a 350 crankshaft in a 400 block. And I know they used to do that a long time back in the day, but it's probably not designed for 1800 horsepower. But we're going to put it back the way it was, since I have a nice crank, and it just is what it is. That's the way I'm going to put it back together. All right, so the old block is ready to dance with the boring bar. Got the caps back on it, taking out all my sensors and everything that I need to get out of it. The more work I can do, the less time it'll take Richard to do what he needs to do. So I try to get a lot done. So hopefully all it's going to need is a sleeve in that one hole, and we'll go from there, and we'll put it back together and try it again. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Go fast and get some win lights.